Deirdre is with us today, and she helps coaches, entrepreneurs, and small service-based business owners work on their business by refining, leveling up, and optimizing their brand marketing and their customer experience so they can achieve the success they deserve. Hi, Deirdre. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy. It's great to be on the show.
And, I love our topic today because I think so many of our listeners are ready for this. We're going to talk about leveling up their brand and their strategies for newer women entrepreneurs to grow the business quickly. And I think there's just so many listeners out there that need that. But before we do that, I would love to hear a little bit more about you, Deirdre, and what led you to the consulting space and working with women entrepreneurs. Can you share that with us?
Okay, let me be brief because for your listeners, they may have guessed I have an Irish accent. And with that Irish accent comes the gift of the gap. So let me try to succinctly describe what led me to being here, even on your show today, Christy, right? So I worked in retail banking for 20 years, and part of my role was managing people and teams and delivering customer experiences. It was marketing products, selling offers, all sorts of things. And in December of 2020, I got laid off. And that led me to really reflect on what my passion points were. The days that I came home from the bank and I said to my husband and my kids, I had an amazing day in the office. I really had to reflect on what had happened in those days that led me to feeling that way. And so when I was being laid off, it really made me think back to what those days were. And then I did some self-coaching. I went and got a career coach. I spoke to a business coach and I went, hey, I've got this idea. Do you think I can make it work? And they validated the idea that I had and said, yep, Deirdre, you've got loads of experience. You've got 20 years experience. You've got a certification in customer experience. You've got all of those things. So yes, go for it. Basically, here I am today.
That's such a great way of figuring out what it is that you're passionate about and what your area of expertise is. What, at the end of the day, what were you working on when you came home and you just felt like you had a great day?
Yeah, it's not something that, we really reflect on because often in life we're so busy. We don't stop to celebrate the wins. And especially in entrepreneurship, I find that to be very true. But part of my coaching that I did myself as well, Christy, was about when I look back, when I was 14, 15, 16, and I was me before I was part of that corporate identity, before I was institutionalized in an organization and my personal brand was aligned with their business brand. Who was I? I really had to go on a journey myself to discover who am I? And I had to figure out what is my personal brand when I separate that from the organizations that I've given 20 years to.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, let's start by talking about what is a brand, because I think a lot of people, especially if they're just starting out in business, they think a brand is their logo and their colors and their fonts. And that's part of your brand, your branding. But can you define a brand for us?
So I like to define a brand as a little bit like your North Star. It's where you point to in your business and say, that's where we're going. This is why we need to go there. And these are all the things that keep us on track. And if we don't have this foundation, this North Star in our business, we're just spinning our wheels. We're going around in circles. We don't know where we're going. We don't know why we're going there or who we're going with. We don't know anything. And it is something that is unique to every individual. People have brands, businesses have brands. Brands are things that make us memorable. It's like that sense of when you meet somebody and you have no recollection of having met them when you meet them for the second time round.
Right.
Has that ever happened to you, Christy?
Never. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, mea culpa, it's absolutely happened to me. And I've had people not remember me and vice versa.
Yeah.
And the reason that happens is because either I or the other person didn't evoke an emotion. We didn't create a feeling. And emotions and feelings are things that create memories.
Yeah.
And brands, when they're designed intentionally and strategically, can differentiate themselves, because that's exactly what they'll set out to do, to create and evoke an emotion, a feeling that causes a memory that makes people want to engage with them again. So, brand is very broad. It does cover a lot of things, like you said, website, logo, all of those things. But on a foundational level, it is about more, who am I? Who is this brand? What do we stand for? Where are we going? Why? Who do we want to go for? Who do we want to serve? How do we want to serve them? It's very, very broad, but it's super exciting. And when people work through what their brand is, it's like, aha,
Mhm.
I get it. It's like the clarity and light bulb moments are just amazing. It's magical to watch people go on that journey.
And it really helps with every part of your business. People think of the branding as the marketing, but once you have your brand outlined, it affects your products, your services, your customer. I mean, really all parts of your business. It's so important. So you outlined a bit of it there, but let's revisit that. What does a comprehensive brand strategy look like? What are the pieces and the parts to that?
So I have a framework that I use. It's my unique 3-step fun framework. It's literally fun. Okay. So business is often too serious. So I like to include a little bit of fun in my brand. And part of my fun framework is initially that the F is an acronym. Fun is an acronym for fun. So F is for foundation. Those brand foundations are: what is your business's purpose, vision, mission, values? Okay, what do you stand for? What will you go to war for, against other people or naysayers about your business? Because this is foundational to you. Okay, those are some of the elements of the foundation, but also things like, what are your core aims of your business? Who is your target audience going to be? Things like, as well, let's say, who your main competitors are. It's important that you have competitive awareness when you're establishing a brand, because you don't want to show up exactly like your closest competitor. And things as well, like brands that inspire you. Those brands don't necessarily need to be in the same industry or sector, but they could be highly advanced or innovative in terms of technology, in terms of how they make people feel. It could be a differentiated service that they create. It could be they're the cheapest brand. So it's about, what are the differentiating factors at a foundational level that you want to be known for, because those are the things that will cause people to have a feeling and emotion. It's that foundational stuff that causes people to have a feeling and emotion. And so it's about strategically designing that. So that's the F for foundations. U then, for a really comprehensive brand strategy, the U in the fun acronym stands for a unique brand style and identity. And again, one of the examples that I like to give is, you could look at Coca-Cola and Pepsi. If I held up two cans, one of Coca-Cola, one of Pepsi, and one was red and the other was blue, and my hand covers both the brand names, you would instantly know from the colors which brand is which. And even though they're both flavors of cola, they both have very distinct styles. And they have those styles because the foundational elements of their brands are very different. They're not trying to do the same thing, even though they may serve a similar audience, they're very different. And so, how they show up visibly, their appearance is very different, and it reflects who they are in their foundations. So, that style guide can come from the type of the type or archetype that you're trying to create for your brand. Like, again, if you think of Disney, they're all about magic and wonder. And so the fonts even that they use are playful. And, everything they do is playful. It's about incredible experiences and happily ever after and all of those lovely things. And so it's about identifying who you want to be. And a great exercise to do this, Christy, for any of your listeners who'd like to try, is to picture your brand as a celebrity going out to the Oscars. What would it wear? Who would it want to sit beside? What kind of earrings or accessories or jewelry would it have on? What kind of outfit would it wear? What would the shoes look like? what kind of car would they pull up in, all of that sort of stuff. And to just have a little bit of fun with creating your brand identity. And colors as well. And you mentioned colors a moment ago, and we might come back to that if we have time as well. But colors, one of the common mistakes that newer entrepreneurs make is that when they're creating their brand and unique style and identity, they choose colors that they like themselves. But actually, color is something that really needs to be considered very carefully, because there is a huge amount of psychology associated with color. Things like red can refer to romance and passion, but it can also be aggressive and inspiring fires, and blue can be calming. And, you know, in fact, some of the world's most successful brands have the color blue in them. So maybe blue is one that people should consider in some way. But color is something that people often make a mistake of choosing colors that they like themselves, as opposed to considering what is the psychology of this color, because their clients maybe wear that.
And just one point to go with that, if anybody's listening and they want to dig into that a little bit deeper, you can just Google color psychology, and it'll come up with all sorts of different sites that have lists of the different colors and the reactions that they incite in people, so that you can see what that looks like, what blue, what emotion that creates, what emotion purple creates. And it's interesting once you start reading it, because you then realize that you have very similar reactions. Purple is royalty and luxury, and then you realize all of the things that you've seen with purple that have those same values. So that's just a little tip if you want to get a little bit deeper into that.
100% on the ball, Christy. Totally agree with you. And it's a fantastic exercise for people to do if you are in those early stages of looking at your brand colors. And even if you're considering a rebrand down the line, you can do that. But there's different hues and tones that you can have of your colors as well, to soften them up, or to use them as accent colors. Instead of having a bright red be a primary color, it could be a soft red in the background that you use for different elements or components of your brand as well. So the end part in the fun framework is about a newsworthy message. So if your message is not newsworthy, well, nobody's going to stop scrolling on social media to read it. If your message is not newsworthy, if it's something about you and your brand, and, I was trying to be succinct when you asked me, what's my story? Because people don't really want to know what my story is. People really want to know is, what can she tell me about brand that's going to help me in my business? Right? So your story has to be about your ideal client. And you have to speak in a tone that resonates with your ideal client. And that tone should be a friendly conversational tone, like the two of you are sitting across a table having a coffee, and you're just having a chat about what problems they have in their business. That should be exactly how you write your copy. It should be how you show up on videos. It should be how you show up on Reels or Insta stories or anything else that you're doing, TikTok videos, you name it. And having that message, a newsworthy message that's consistent, that has the same narrative all the way throughout any platform you're on, any content that you show up in, that newsworthy message will be something that people will sign up to and consistently want to learn more about. So getting your story right about your business, which is actually about your clients, not about you, getting that newsworthy message right is a foundational and a core component of a comprehensive brand strategy.
I love that. And people don't realize, and that's such a great point, that your story really, if it's going to connect, isn't about you. I mean, even your about you page isn't really about you. It's about how you can help them, how your story affects them. And if you look at it that way, it's much easier to write it when you're getting started as well. So that's a great tip. I love that.
Yeah. And clients are like, oh my gosh, thank God I don't have to write something about me. I wouldn't know what to write. Like, my story is boring or whatever. And it's like, no, it's okay. You don't need to write about you. It's all about them.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So fun, Fun. So give us what the meaning again. It's foundational, unique, and
newsworthy.
Also handy if you want to do some PR, because that's all about being newsworthy as well. So it's a great foundation for that. That's fantastic. I love that. So if that's what we should be doing, Then let's look at the other side of it. What are some common mistakes that especially newer women entrepreneurs make when they're building this brand and building their business?
Oh, Christy, the same ones keep cropping up over and over and over again. And you already mentioned them, right? So, logo and website. Most entrepreneurs, not just female entrepreneurs, mind you, most entrepreneurs, when they start out, they get a graphic designer and a web designer, potentially a web developer, or they'll do it themselves. They'll get a logo created. And from that logo, they'll take those colors and fonts and create a website. And they think, that's it. I'm kind of brand. I'm so proud of my lovely website. Doesn't it look pretty? And then, nobody's visiting. They can't figure out why. Nobody's buying their programs, products, or services. They can't figure out why. And it's because a website and a logo, choosing colors, that is not a brand. That does not comprise of a brand. The second mistake, and I've already touched on this, is colors. They're choosing colors that they themselves like, as opposed to choosing colors that are appropriate for the type of message they're trying to create. An example again that I give of this is if I'm an undertaker, okay, I'm not going to have neon pink on my website in my fonts unless my target demographic are funky people who love neon pink, and that is a specific target audience that I am pursuing, because they're going to be like, I don't care what happens to me after I pass away, you need to use that undertaker for me because they know me. Okay.
They feel me, they know my brand. And that's such a great point, because unless you are your avatar, and in many, many cases you aren't, right? Unless you represent your target demographic, what you personally like really doesn't matter. It's all about what your avatar likes. So I love that. That's a great example too.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And the third thing they make, again, we've already touched on this. They make their brand story about themselves. They go into years and years of a spiel about 75 years ago when their grandfather set up their business and blah, 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 blah. And people have just tuned out and lost interest after about 3 seconds because they don't care about that stuff. All they care about is what's in it for me. That's it. What's in it for me? I've got a problem. Can you solve it? How do you fix it? I don't believe you because you're just talking about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And the difference here, because, we talk about the value of telling your own story, but I think that the key is that your story is only effective if it's a bridge to possibility for them, if they can see themselves in your story. So even though it's your story, again, still about them. So I think people get confused, right? Because they say, well, they tell me that I need to tell my story. And yeah, you do, but you always have to tell it with an eye to how it's going to help your avatar, right?
Yeah. So there is a fine line between telling your backstory and how you can demonstrate empathy, authority, and expertise so that people believe you to be credible, so that people believe that you can get them from where they are now to where they want to get to. There's a fine line. So, an exercise that I regularly tell clients to do is go back and look at content you've created before you post it. Go back and look at emails you've written to your nurture sequences, your website, wherever you've generated or created content. And look at all the places you've written I, my, we, our, us. And how can you rephrase that sentence? So you're telling your story, but you're saying, has this ever happened to you? We've been in that situation. So you say, we once, or I've been there once. And so you're setting a scene almost, but it's a scene, yes, you've been in, and it's your story. And you're sharing that, but in a way that it's about that. Does this sound familiar to you? You're sitting at your desk. You know you need to write a blog post. You've got writer's block. You don't know where to start. That's exactly what happens to me every week when I sit down and I need to start creating my content. So instead of my, it's all about you, does this sound like you? And that is so much more effective when you're talking about stories, and stories are so important in those messages as well, Christy, because When you create a story, people can visualize and picture themselves in that story. And I could talk about story all day, right? Because that's part of what I do. But let me just explain or elaborate on this a little bit more, because I love what you said there about we do encourage people to talk about their backstory, and stories really resonate with people. And here's an example of, how you can prove that stories resonate with people. Why do people go to the cinema? They go to the cinema to watch a new movie and hear what the story is about. And whilst they're in the cinema for 2 hours, 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever, they're totally transformed. They are captivated by the hero of the story, a potential villain in the story, the obstacle that's cropped up that the hero must overcome. That if the hero doesn't overcome this obstacle and get to the end, what's going to happen is it's going to end in failure. And that failure cannot happen, because if that failure happens too early in the story, well, everybody will leave the cinema. So it's the only time, and it's 90 minutes or 2 hours, and people are captivated. And it's irrespective of what culture they're in, or where they're from, or what their beliefs are, people are captivated by stories. Okay, you can't take your phone out in cinema, but they're still captivated regardless. And so when you use storytelling in your messaging, and you talk about your clients as though they're your hero, you talk about the problems and the obstacles that crop up, maybe their pains, their irritations, their frustrations, their challenges, whatever it might be, they're thinking, oh my gosh, Christy really knows me. She's talking about all of the things that are happening in my life. And it seems like she gets me. Maybe it's happened to her. And she's further along now. How did she overcome those so that it ended in success for her? And she's gotten her happily ever after.
Yeah.
I want that too.
Yeah. It's that bridge between where they are and where they can be, where you want to take them.
Yeah.
So if we've got the strategy and we're avoiding those mistakes, hopefully, let's condense it right down to the most critical steps. What is the best way, again, for newer women entrepreneurs to grow their business then quickly and easily? I think I know the answer to this. It's going to be a brand, right?
It's going to be a brand, but there's so much more to it, right?
Right.
It does come quickly and easily, but only after you do these things.
Okay.
Number one thing is you need to know your audience. Okay. Because you can build a brand that's fabulous and pretty and nice, and it tells a lovely story. But if it's telling the story to the wrong people or speaking about the wrong problems, well, then nobody's going to listen. So you need to know your audience. And that means researching, having conversations with them, and gathering qualitative data about the challenges that they're facing, what their aspirations are, who are they now, who do they want to become, and that before and after. So you can write compelling stories about it. So know your audience. That's the first thing. And again, it can be asking them simple things like, what would stop you from buying whatever it is that you offer? Then you're learning about what their fears are. You're learning about why they might not go ahead with you. And those are things you can speak to in your messaging, so that you've already allayed their fears. So knowing your audience. And I would talk about that part for the whole show, Christy, because
And I think, newer entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that have been around for a decade, if you're having trouble, if you're not making the sales, if your marketing isn't landing, this is probably where you missed the mark. You don't have the right audience. You haven't done your research. And I think, when we start out too, we feel like we know who we're selling to. We do a lot of this guesswork, and we kind of skip the actual research of the, speaking to the demographic and pulling those numbers and looking at the competitors and what their demographic looks like. And it causes so much trouble down the road.
Yeah. And I mean, there's fantastic resources that you can use for free as well. Like Ipsos there in Canada, they do incredible market research where you can go on and read their insights and gather data that way about a particular segment or cohort of people potentially. So that might give you quantitative data, but qualitative data is really about diving in under the hood with prospects who potentially may buy from you. And, you know, it's interesting because I actually spoke to somebody about this last week and I was asking questions about this. And one of the things that I was trying to comprehend for people that we were training at the time was, when is it important to do this? Not just when you're a new entrepreneur. It's important to do this when you are building something new, when the journey is ongoing with the client and you have active people using your program, product, or service. And then also, if they leave or they've finished using your program, product, or service, why? So it's important to do this and know your audience, know what's going on, what's happening with them before, during, and after. And right now, the world it's topsy-turvy, okay? And we need to understand, what are our people feeling right now? And perhaps their challenges have changed. And so now is a good time to be asking people as well, you know, what's happening? What are your challenges? What are your pain points? What irritates you now? Things have changed so much in the last 2 years. So for anybody listening who hasn't done, you know, market research or gathered customer insights, now is the time to do it. So that's one of the first things I'd say. So it's quick and easy once you've done the research, and that research start there. The second thing is to create a brand and marketing playbook, Christy, because when you have that, you have your fun, comprehensive brand strategy. And that full strategy can keep you or your team or your VA or whoever aligned so that you don't deviate from your foundations, your unique style and identity, and your newsworthy message. It keeps your brand and marketing on track. So create a playbook. You can get them for free on Canva. You can find them in loads of different places. You can hire a brand strategist or marketing strategist to do it with you. But create the playbook. It is such a worthwhile exercise, and that will last you for years until you rebrand, refresh, or come up with a new program, product, or service for a totally different market. So the third thing to consider is how your brand will differentiate from others. Is it going to be a luxury brand or the cheapest brand in the market, the most advanced in terms of technology, the most innovative, the most what? How are you going to be different from people who are just like you? So consider that, and consider how you want to make people feel when they engage with you. What do you want your reputation to be? So I think putting some thought into that and then making that happen through the experiences you create is really important. That will help you grow quickly because you'll be different. The fourth thing is about building brand credibility, authority, and expertise. And one way that you can do that, and why it's important to do that, is that positions you as a guide to the hero of your story, who is your ideal client. And in any story, heroes need guides to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. And so when they have a guide, to somebody who will hold their hand and that they can trust. So how do you build this brand credibility, authority, and expertise? It's by working with people and getting results. It's by showing up consistently and having brand awareness, because people go, oh yes, she has an established brand. It can be getting something published. It can be hiring a publicist if you can't, if you can't get into a publication, for example. If I saw that Christy was featured in Forbes magazine, I'd be like, hey, Christy, that's incredible. Oh my gosh, how did you get there? Your brand must be amazing. I completely trust you if you've been in Forbes, right? So it's the trust that credibility can create. The fifth thing is that you make your story and your content newsworthy and notable. So we've already talked about that. The sixth thing is aim to add value. Okay. When you're branding and marketing, if your brand is consistently showing up with a message that says, buy from me now, buy from me now, buy from me now, buy from me now, everybody's going to be so repelled by your buy from me now message that they won't want to even follow or engage with you. So instead, aim to add value, because value creates reciprocity. And when you add value, and people are so thankful for the free thing that you gave them, and do not scrimp on this value, let me add. When you give incredible value for free, people will think, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I can't believe I got that for free. But you know what? I still need a guide to help me do it. It's like if I go to the salon and I get my hair blow dried, it's so much better than when I do it myself. So we need a guide. We need someone like people who work in the salon to give us those blow dries. It's the same for your program, product, or service. So add value. And the final thing, be consistent and persistent with everything, with everything. And when I say everything, I mean every one thing, Christy. And let me be clear on that. One message, one identity, one program, product, or service. You show up on one platform for one target audience. So be consistent and persistent with that one thing when you start out. Because if you're focused, so focused on that one thing for these one group of people in this one location, your message is just going to jump off the screen. It's going to jump off the page, and you will stop people scrolling. So there's a lot there, I know, but doing these things will absolutely help grow quick and easy.
Those are, and so the last one there makes me laugh because I think for so many of us as entrepreneurs, we tend to have that shiny object syndrome and the blinders. You've got to put the blinders on when you're starting out, right? You've got to really focus and we get discouraged if things aren't going the way we think. And then we think, well, maybe if we try that and maybe if we try that. And if you try all the things, none of the things end up being successful. So that's amazing advice. All of those I think are really the keys to success in any stage of the business. And certainly when you're starting out. And what I love about that as well is that if you're in a crowded market and if you've got a lot of competitors out there, if you nail those, especially figuring out your unique difference and how to stand out in your competitors and creating that authority in your marketplace, those are the things that suddenly wipe away all your competition and you're standing alone, which I think is really fantastic. So thank you for that. That's amazing. So before we wrap up, we've got a couple of minutes left. And before we wrap up, I just wanted to ask you a question I love to ask when we have the time, which is, what is your best piece of advice for a woman that's just starting out on her entrepreneurial journey? And it could be to do with the branding. It could be just some advice that you received over the years that's really resonated. What can you share with us?
I had actually heard this same quote last week and it's stuck with me. But it was one I heard when I started out, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others or go with Madeline. Don't ask me to quote you verbatim, but you need a guide. When you're an entrepreneur, you need a guide. If you're a new entrepreneur, you need a guide. That was why when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I hired a business coach. I knew I couldn't do this on my own. All those shiny object things, I completely suffered from the same syndrome, Christy. I needed my coach to pull me back and say, hang on there, Deirdre. No, come back. What was your one thing? And if I didn't have that, I don't know where I'd be right now. So I think, yes, you can go fast if you go alone, but you can go so much further if you have others, and you need a team of support. Because if you, as you said, when we get that shiny object syndrome or we try all of the things and they don't work, it feels like failure, and your brand and your business can feel like your baby. And it feels like, oh, my baby is just not as perfect as I thought it was. And we take that as a form of rejection. It feels so personal, and that can really impact your confidence. And so you need somebody in your corner to support you and say, it's okay. These things are normal. You tried it for 2 weeks. It didn't work. It's okay. Give it 6 months, give it 3 months, give it however long. You need somebody who's gone the path before you. You need somebody who's tried and tested similar methods, who can help and support you. You need somebody who can help you find the way to get there faster and easier. You need a sounding board. So to go far, you need others. That is the best piece of advice I got, and I stand by it today. Always be coached, always have somebody in your corner.
Yeah, you need a team. And you're not, nobody is good at all the things. And when you start out, you're responsible for all the things. So if you're not good at, bookkeeping, you need a bookkeeper. Or if you can't afford help, maybe you can't afford a coach, you find a mentor. You find somebody in your industry that's done it before, that's willing to help. But everybody needs a team. I think that's a hard lesson I learned too a couple of times along the way, because I like to do things myself, but you can't. You need a team. You need a support. You need a network. You need to figure that out.
Just to add to that, Christina, the one thing for me was that I wanted to stay married to my husband. And I did not want to be having conversations about my business around the dinner table when I started out, because he has run his own business before, but it was a long time ago. And the challenges he faced in his business are very different to the challenges I faced in mine. And I didn't want my business or entrepreneurial journey to seep into my home life, because my view has always been, when I worked in the bank, you leave work at work and you leave home at home. And so I needed somebody external who I could speak to. And I have other people, I have people who are entrepreneurs as well, who I have a very trusting relationship with, that I can openly say, oh my gosh, I had the worst day. This happened. I created a post, somebody unfollowed me, and I'm like, oh. you know, Whatever might have happened, you just need somebody who understands. And that can be, again, it can be a sounding board. It can be somebody like you, Christy, who says, if you don't know how to do your books, you need a bookkeeper. Here's why. If you don't, A, B, or C could happen. So you do need a sounding board, 100%.
Yeah, love
And
that.
if you want to get married.
I envy your balance. It sounds like you've got a really good, a really, really clear boundaries, which I do not have. So I think we might need to talk about that later. You can give me some notes. So you've got some really great resources available for our listeners. You've got a couple of great resources. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And I'm going to put the links in the show notes for everybody, so you don't have to try and scribble these down, but I'd love for you to explain what they are, because they're really fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two key resources that I've shared with you. So one is, how strong is your brand? So it's a quiz. If you've already set up your brand and you're just kind of thinking, "Ugh, I think I'm maybe still a rookie at this whole branding stuff." Well, this quiz is going to help you identify exactly where you're at, and it's going to give you 3 pointers as to what you need to do next. So you can go from a rookie to a pro. Or if your brand is thriving, it's going to help you get to a pro. So it's just going to identify for you exactly where you're at right now, or if there are things you need to work at in relation to your brand. So that's the first one. And the second one is Story Brand Marketing Assessment, because I am a Story Brand certified guide. Part of my entrepreneurial journey is helping business owners with customer experience. And my mantra has always been for that, about making the customer the hero of everything that you do in your business. Because if everything you create is about your ideal customer and what they want and what they need, well, your business is going to survive and thrive, right? So when I started my business, I read the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And the book, I was captivated. It's a 7-part framework that helps you clarify your message so your customers will listen. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to share this with my clients. And so I went off to Nashville virtually during COVID, and I got my certification. And this assessment, when you do it, it's so comprehensive. It gives you like a 50-page report that breaks down for you how effective your marketing is. Everything from your messaging to how effective your website is, to sales funnels that you've created, even proposals that you might be putting out, and whether or not you're getting positive responses from what you're putting out into the world. So it is incredibly detailed and customized based on how you complete it. So it is an incredible resource to have. I'm so lucky to be part of the Story Brand community to be able to share that with you, Christy.
Yeah, it's amazing. I actually did it last night and I thought, oh, this is like, it's quite a few questions to get you through it because it is customized, right? And about halfway through, I was like, okay, this is a lot of questions. And then I got to the end and I got the report, and you're right, it was like 52 pages, I think. It was just amazingly detailed. So it's well worth the 5-10 minutes that it takes to fill it out, the information that you get out of it. So we're going to put that link in the show notes. And if you're watching on a platform if you're listening on a platform where you can't see the show notes, you can always go over to onestepempire.com. That's the podcast website, and the show notes and all the episodes and all the good things are going to be there as well. And tell us a little bit, Deirdre, because we didn't really talk about it. What are you doing now with your clients? What, if people want to get in touch with you, what kind of services are you offering? How can you help personally?
So I've got two frameworks that I use to help clients. So I help them with creating their own unique fun framework. So I do that through a brand and marketing playbook. So we use the fun framework to create their brand and marketing playbook. So that's one component. And then the other element is where it's mentoring really around all of the stages of a customer journey, which starts from creating that brand so people have a sensation or feeling when they engage with you. It's mentoring around marketing, strategy. What is your strategy for marketing? How can you build that brand awareness? It's the sales, helping people have those really effective sales conversations so more people say yes. Creating customer journeys that customers absolutely love and want to scream from the rooftops about you. And then it's about what are the skills that you need to keep getting up and doing this every single day and building your brand and your business. So there's quite a lot in there. It's my 5 step process to building brands that stand out. So those are the two services that I'm offering right now.
So important. And it's so hard to step back from your own branding and to step back from when you're creating your buyer personas and your ideal avatars and all of those things. Even when I do mine, and I teach people how to do theirs, but when I do mine, I have to get people to come in and help me because it's so hard to step back from that in your own business. So really important to get help like that.
Often we're like the cobblers with no shoes, Christy.
It's so frustrating though, because I'm like, I show people how to do this. Why can I not do this for myself? But I do all right. But as soon as I get someone else to come in and have a look at it, and it's like, oh, hang on, you got to step back from this and take a different perspective. It's really, really useful. So really important to get that coach or that mentor in there, or get Deirdre in there to help you because she's an expert. So we're going to put those links in the show notes for you. And I highly recommend that you go and you check out that story brand marketing report because it's going to make a massive difference in your business. So take advantage of that. It's free and it's such a great resource. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today, Deirdre. I really appreciate your time and your expertise. And really, these are fantastic tips that are going to help a lot of people. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.